Let's talk about casting and finding these two great actors to play those roles.
Right from the off, we were talking about Naomi. So because I know Naomi will roll up her sleeves and get in amongst it, because she'd come to Kenya with me and being a teacher, and those kids, you know, when you shout cut, they were like, you mark our work, you know, that they'd done in the scenes. So it was like, I knew she would, the whole style of the film was, I felt, we go to South Africa, we use the communities that we're working with, they'll be part of the construction of the film and the behind the camera, but also in front of the camera. So as much as we could to have raw talent in there. So places like Soweto, Kliptown, whole communities, those crowd scenes that you saw, they're real people that are living the struggle today, who know Mandela, who know the struggle, have lived it, and are living it today in modern South Africa. So it was, for me, it was to, being from outside was really important for me to create a world where we dropped the audience in amongst it with the real vibrancy of the place. And that meant dropping the actors in. Idris, I love his work. He's subtle, beautiful performance, very true, completely believed everything that he does. And I had an instinct, and there was a woman called Shaheen Baig, who's a UK casting director. And she said, I've got an instinct you'd really get on with Idris. And I just think you'd really click. So me and him met. I went and met him and talked to him and said, listen, Idris, I'm not going to, I wrote him a letter first saying, I don't want to do a looky-likey version. I don't want to do an impression. I've met these people, and men and women that knew Mandela when he was a young guy, you know, and had gone out partying with him and knew he liked cars and knew he liked clothes and knew he liked women. And, you know, I had first-hand accounts, you know, of people, and all these people were saying, Mandela was a star. He was like, he'd walk into a room, you'd feel it. And when I walked in the room with Idris, I could feel it, you know. He's a star, but not a star in that kind of, but a warm, good man, you know. And that's what everybody was saying, you know. So when I said, listen, Idris, no one really knows what Mandela looked like as a young guy. Let's start that like that.
Idris, since he started that, this is a role that I know, because I know we've seen you in the United States as, you know, Stringer Bell. We remember Stringer Bell from The Wire, and some of us who watch BBC America, we watch John Luther. So this is completely different. This is a real person. It's a biopic.
The approach on every role is pretty much the same. You know, there's a certain amount of research that you have to do, whether the character is fictional or real, you know, because you have to, as an actor, or my particular, you know, sort of approach is to always understand who that person is, you know, even though we have what is on the script, but who is that person 360? What is he like when he's at home? What is he like when the cameras aren't on him? So that approach for Mandela is exactly the same as it is for, you know, Stringer or any of the other characters I've played. I think though with Mandela there is a certain amount of you know, restrictions as to what you can do. Your interpretation has to stay within the realms of you know, the real person. And in this instance, we had such a magnanimous man that, you know, the realms were very, very wide, you know. But the truth is, as a younger man, we don't know too much about him. And so, apart from the fact that Justin thinks that he and I have things in common, cars, women, and such, you know, I had a certain amount of freedom to sort of create what you know, an interpretation of who the young Mandela was. And what I found in my research was that his presence was certainly one of his driving forces, the wind beneath his wings, so to speak, you know. You know, when he decided to become a lawyer and become the first black lawyer, it was definitely that sort of presence that got him into the room, that got, you know, that won the confidence of a Soweto that had no idea what a lawyer was. Mm-hmm. Did you know you could fight the law? What are you talking about? And so Mr. Mandela's presence was very much what the ANC found to be appealing and in enlisting in him. And, you know, I mean, Mandela is, you know, such a world citizen. Everyone knows who he is and what he sounds like. So, you know, it is a bit of responsibility, but you have to ask the audience to trust me. I'm Idris, I act, and I want you to trust my interpretation, guided by what's your name again?
Did you have a chance to meet with Mandela or correspond with him in any way?
No, I didn't have a chance. He was sort of, you know, very ill at the time. He's much better now, thankfully, but he was very ill at the time and just not in the, you know, in the frame to do that. But the foundation were very helpful to us, and the family was very helpful, especially Winnie and the 2 daughters.
Yeah.
This was definitely, without a doubt, the most challenging role that I've ever played because of the breadth of time that I was playing the character over, and also because of the amount of transitions that Winnie goes through. I almost feel as though Winnie is like 7 different people in one. People have such polarized opinions about who she is. And you'd speak to one person and they portray her in one light and then another in a completely different light. And it was really difficult for me to kind of create a comprehensive view of who this, and a cohesive view of who this woman was. And so it was a matter of like watching hours and hours of uncut footage of her being interviewed, reading biographies written about her, interviewing people who knew her and had met her, watching documentaries about the apartheid era, because obviously I'm British and going to South Africa, you know, you had to really swat up on their history, and I felt often like a researcher rather than an actor. You know, it was a hell of a lot of work, and I think what really helped me was actually Idris organised for us to go and have dinner with Winnie, and that was when it all came together for me, because I said, you know, how do you want to be portrayed? How do you want people to see you up on screen? And she said, look, you're the right person for this role. You've been chosen because you're the right person for it. You will have done your research. All I ask of you is to portray me faithfully. So she kind of gave me carte blanche to create her as I saw fit. And it was incredibly liberating for me, because up until that point, I'd felt straitjacketed by different people's ideas about how she should be played. And one of the great things that I love about acting is to be totally free, that I can use my imagination to create a character in any way that I see fit. But with a character that's a living character that's already made choices, then you have to, you're constrained by the choices they've already made in real life. And you have to do the research to find the emotional truth and behind why they made those choices. But to have her liberate me in that way and say, look, do your research and then you're free, was fantastic for me.
I mean, you did a lot of prosthetic makeup in the film. Was that, I see you smiling, you're like, oh, it was a lot of makeup.
It was, yes. It was a lot of prosthetic. I hated it. Idris was much better at dealing with it than me.
Was it just like hours? Was it, how what was that process like?
Yeah, it was a really hard thing to do. It was roughly, I think, about 4 hours a day for me in the older stage Mandela, which meant, you know, sort of waking up at 3 in the morning and sort of getting in a chair about 4 to start for about 5. And I did about 40 days of prosthetics.
Did you shoot it all in sequence, or were there some days he was young Mandela, some days old Mandela?
Sequence?
No. No. He was thrown in right at the deep end.
Treat?
You know, that last shot, it was like in the first day or 2.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was, yeah. But, you know, it was a really interesting sort of design process, because, you know, we had to sort of design a Mandela that, you know, we can't suddenly go from Idris, a young Idris who is portraying the young Mandela, to a older, recognizable Mandela, without having to sort of age me and Mandela. It was a really interesting blend of Idris and this older, you know, representation of who we know and we love famously, the silver hair, the face, the smile, the eyes especially, you know, and the character ended up just looking like my dad, basically. I was like, let's just make this guy as my old man.
you know, it was this thing of not doing an impersonation of him. I just didn't want any of the actors. The guy playing Walter Sisulu does not look like Tony. You know, he doesn't. You know, Walter Sisulu had a white father. He's a different. He's totally different looking. And it was really important that right from the first conversations that we all had, we're going to come from the inside out rather than the outside in. And I think that kind of helped that. When we were testing the makeup and stuff, I think that helped kind of just free us up. You know, let's be true to the men and women that we're representing rather than kind of getting caught up with the voice. I mean, my son does a voice of Mandela, you know, and it does an impersonation of Mandela. Little Joshua, you know what I mean? It's like...
One of the scenes I was discussing with Justin, you know, the scene where I say in the radio, the press conference that, you know, my wife and I are going to split. And there's all the journalists sitting at the, you know, ready to come and whatnot. And while we were lining up for the shot, I'm sitting there with prosthetics on. I haven't said a word yet. And there's this one extra, and she just looks at me, and she just... Is that a mask you have, Mandela? Oh, man, I was pissed. And I hadn't even said a word yet, hadn't done any acting, but that's for her, she was like, oh, I've been waiting here all day, and you're going to bring out a guy in a rubber mask, and this is Mandela? What, are you kidding me? Obviously then, you know, when I did my scene and that, you know, she kind of like, well, like you say, you know, felt the truth of what we were trying to do. And it was a slightly different, you know, sort of energy I got from her. But it's, you know, to Justin's point, you know, that for me it was tough to do the older Mandela scenes with a lot of extras because I was so conscious about the mask and, you know, that it didn't look like the real Mandela. Which actually, I guess, just really sort of burnt a hole in my, not burnt a hole, but put a fire into my ambition to want to be real and really be honest in those scenes, you know.
Okay, so last question, and Naomi, I'm gonna throw the last question at you. What do you think for you was probably one of the, I don't want to call it the most difficult, but I guess a scene that really stands out for you in the film that you really loved or part of it that you really loved doing?
Love scenes.
That's her question.
I'm so proud of this movie, and I was so blown away when I finally saw it all cut together. You know, it was that I love all of it, you know, and I'm so impressed with Justin's work. You know, I just think it really is an extraordinary film and an extraordinary accomplishment, given the fact that, you know, we've all read Long Walk to Freedom. It's a dense book, you know. It's covering a huge expanse of history where there are so many events and these incredibly complex characters as well. And to distill it in 2 and a bit hours and to do such a brilliant job, I just think is really extraordinary. And not only to do that, but to also not make it seem like a historical lesson, which it doesn't. You know, it's a beautifully moving film with a love story at the heart of it. And so I couldn't pick a scene.